The Magic Faraway Tree is a new British family fantasy movie, and honestly, this was just a delight. This is the kind of family movie that I feel like we don't get nearly enough anymore. It's sweet, imaginative, funny, charming, and completely sincere about what it's trying to be. It doesn't feel embarrassed about being a whimsical fantasy movie for kids, and it also doesn't feel like it's constantly trying to throw things in there specifically to keep the adults from getting bored. And I really appreciated that. The easiest comparison I can make is that it feels a lot like a Roald Dahl story. There's that same sense that absolutely anything could happen, where the world has its own strange logic, and the characters just kind of have to accept it and go along for the ride. You have these bizarre characters, strange locations, unusual rules, and a lot of playful wordplay. It's basically a Roald Dahl story without all the horrible adults. And I don't mean that as a criticism of Roald Dahl, that's obviously part of his style, but it's actually really refreshing to see a family fantasy movie where the parents aren't evil, neglectful, stupid, or constantly arguing with each other. In fact, one of the best things about the movie is the marriage between the parents. They're loving and supportive and actually seem like they love each other. They have disagreements and frustrations because they're human beings, but there's never a sense that their marriage is secretly falling apart or that one of them is going to leave. That shouldn't feel unusual for a family movie, but somehow it does, and that's actually quite sad. It's genuinely refreshing to see a healthy marriage portrayed as something normal and positive, instead of automatically creating some kind of marital drama because the writers think every movie needs conflict between parents. The fantasy itself also reminded me a lot of Alice in Wonderland, particularly because of the clever wordplay and the way different eras of the world operate according to their own strange rules. There are lessons for the characters along the way, and some of them are admittedly pretty familiar. We do get cliche things like be careful what you wish for, which is probably one of the oldest lessons you can think of, but I didn't really mind that because the movie has so much fun. It doesn't feel like the movie is stopping every 10 minutes to stare directly at the camera and explain the moral to the audience. The lessons come naturally through the adventures the characters are having. And this movie is incredibly imaginative, and that's the biggest compliment I can give it. There's constantly something new to look at. New creatures, new environments, new ideas, new little fantasy concepts. It has that wonderful children's book feeling where you're never entirely sure what you're going to encounter on the next page. I also really appreciate how much of the movie appears to have been done with practical effects. Obviously, there are visual effects in here. You're making a movie about a magical tree leading to fantasy worlds. You're going to need CGI. But whenever they could actually build something, create a costume, make a creature physically exist on the set, or give the actors something real to interact with, it feels like they tried to do that. And that gives the movie so much personality. There's this genuine quality to everything. The characters actually feel like they're standing there with the actors, instead of everybody staring at a tennis ball that somebody is going to replace a month later. That kind of filmmaking works especially well for this type of whimsical fantasy. There's also an interesting theme here about kids spending too much time on devices. And yeah, I mean, Toy Story 5 did that, a couple months ago, because that is a very similar idea of technology and children's attention, but here, it feels a lot more genuine than it did with the Disney movie. It doesn't feel like somebody in a boardroom where somebody realized, hey, kids use tablets now, let's make that the villain. No, the technology theme fits naturally into this story. The adults watching this movie will absolutely understand the frustration of watching kids become completely absorbed in screens, while I think children watching it will understand why the fantasy world the movie presents is so much more exciting than staring at a device all day. And the movie doesn't scream the message at you. It just says, hey, look at this incredible world, and what happens when kids actually go outside and interact with each other and use their imaginations and experience something together. It's a much more effective way to communicate that idea. And I think that's why this works so well as an actual family movie, rather than just a kids' movie that parents have to sit through. Adults are going to relate to the family dynamics and technology themes, while the younger viewers are going to enjoy the dreamlike fantasy, the creatures, the comedy, and just the sheer weirdness of everything happening around them. It really does feel like one of those movies where different generations are going to enjoy it for slightly different reasons. Now, my biggest criticism is probably the villain. There is a villain who shows up toward the final act, and I actually liked the character. Rebecca Ferguson does a great job, but she's barely in the movie. She only has 10 minutes of screen time, and because of that, when we suddenly reach the more traditional villain conflict near the end, it feels like the movie's introducing this character right around the same time that it needs to start defeating her. I really think they could have used her more. Even if she had appeared periodically throughout the movie or been established as a looming threat earlier, I think the final act would have been stronger, and they do talk about her a couple of times, but it's more as a joke, like the Frau Blucher running joke from Young Frankenstein. It's kind of what it felt like. It wasn't like she's constantly watching them and plotting. When she comes in, it's kind of out of nowhere, and she's a little underdeveloped. She's entertaining, but I wish there were more of her. But even with that criticism, I still had a really good time with this. Now, apparently it's rated PG for rude humor and mild action, and because in literally every other country that this came out, it's rated G. So, there's nothing inappropriate in this movie at all. So, yeah, there's some very mild fantasy action and here, but it's really, really tame. It really should have been rated G. There wasn't anything where I was like, oh, That's why it got PG. Like, no, it's good. Like, it's incredibly family friendly. It's a G movie. Like, if I were judge, I would rate this G. And it's very wholesome. So it's sweet, charming, and heartwarming, and it never feels like it's just really trying to force you to cry. There aren't constant swelling violins, while characters who can fight in speeches about how much love each other. The emotional moments work because we spent time with these characters to actually like them. Let's make the sweetness feel earned instead of manipulative. I just thought, yeah, we need more movies like this. It's not everything has to be cynical. Not every family needs endless sarcasm. Not every parent needs to be secretly miserable. And not every fantasy movie needs to spend 200 million trying to convince you that bigger means better. Sometimes you can just make something imaginative and charming and a loving family going on a magical adventure, and that's enough. Adults can enjoy the themes about parenthood and children growing up in a world dominated by devices. Kids can enjoy the fantasy, the humor, and the wonderfully strange places these creatures visit. And everybody can enjoy spending a couple hours in a movie that genuinely wants to make you feel happy. The Magic Faraway Tree is a fantastic family movie. Go see it. Seriously, we need more movies like this. It's a shame it was not well advertised and it probably won't do very well. Let's change that. Let's make sure this movie does really well. For me, it gets an A-, a 9 out of 10, and 4 out of 5 stars. And the reason it's not a 10 out of 10, like I said, the villain was a little underdeveloped. If it had had kind of a stronger, more developed villain, easily would have been a 10 out of 10. It's just shy of greatness, but it's still worth seeing.